have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Mr. Hammer, and you're listening.
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to. I'm Mark Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live. I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to. I'm Mark Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels, or City of Demons, depending on who you ask. Remember, we are internationally syndicated with LNM, Late Night in the Midlands in the U.S., as well as deprogram radio in the United Kingdom/EU. Now, we always bring you a fantastic show covering all sorts of topics. This is a guest that I have not interviewed for a few years now, and it's a story that you guys all know. If anybody even knows anything about ufology or the history of it, up there with Roswell and a few other major events, this one person, I believe, was the actual first outspoken person to actually have contact, have videos, and so much more. Questions that we will all be able to ask because we have the authorized American media representative for the one and only Mr. Billy Meir. Michael Horn. Michael, welcome to the show. Welcome back, should I say, actually.
It's been a while. Thank you, Dr. J. I am glad to be back and, doing a direct interview with you.
Now, let me ask you, first of all, Michael, okay, that's your name, obviously, the given. Billy Meir, when did you start working with him, and why doesn't he do any media appearances after his own documentaries that he released his own footage and his own stories and etc.?
Well, I will answer it this way. I did my first presentations on his case beginning back in about 1987 or 1988, and I officially began to represent him in 2004. At the time, that was my fourth visit, I think fourth or fifth visit to Switzerland, fifth probably. And I asked him if I could officially represent them because I was doing presentations and writing articles and stuff, and I wanted to be able to do it, with their authorization and cooperation, so that I could also make sure that I was only going to provide the information that they had, authorized and put out. And while I could still remain, nicely objective, and when there's things that I couldn't prove myself, I'd say, according to the information in the case, but I then had the authorization to do it and the flexibility and the freedom. And as to why Billy doesn't do his own presentations, well, several reasons. One, he's 81 years old now. He has had a heart valve replacement. He's had brain injury, rheumatism, phantom limb pain, a broken shoulder connected to his only good arm. He has only one arm. Tinnitus, you name it. He's gone through it all. And he's also survived 23 attempts on his life for his trouble. So there's no reason for him, certainly not in these, recent years or, even in any time to come, for him to go out there and do, represent himself with this type of stuff. There's, it's not something that he needs to do. It's not something that physically he probably could comfortably do. He's based in a kind of remote area in a, rugged rural Switzerland. And so I'm glad to do it.
When I went to Switzerland, I got to say it's one of the most beautiful places in the world that I visited. And I also, and probably objectively, most people would say the same thing. But when Billy was actually doing these things and talking to, we'll get into some Yazi and other contexts in a minute and make these videos. He was really, I don't want to use the word outspoken, but putting himself out there, like you said, the documentaries, the different interviews. I know there's people that came to visit him, such as yourself, where he showed various photographs of different things. Was there one specific time that he told you when he started or when he first realized that he was being visited?
Well, actually, a couple things. First, he is still meeting with these people. It hasn't stopped.
Ooh.
Contrary to the rumors that fly around in the rather ridiculous UFO community, which is comprised of people who know absolutely nothing and try to make as much money peddling it as possible. Well, Meir's contacts haven't stopped. He still is publishing his information and his contacts. He has predictions that he published a year ago in October. He has information that he's published as recently as, within the past month or so, and they publish it in publications that they disseminate that are printed primarily in German, and then people will translate into English. So Billy has not stopped with that information, and all that has happened in the past, years is that one after another of the prophecies and predictions have come true, and more are on the way. So that's just to clarify that part of it. As for telling me when his first contacts occurred, actually, he has published that information long ago. And in many ways, we even have it in one of our films called The Silent Revolution of Truth. He speaks about his first contacts taking place at the age of 5 years old as a young boy. And with some sporadic interruptions for different reasons, because he had to go and do things in his own life for a while, those contacts are still ongoing with a number of people, not always with the same original people that first contacted him, but actually with most of them, yes.
Some people say that he is a starseed. That's the reason why he's been contacted from such an early age. Have you ever considered that possibility, that the reason why they're watching him is because he has some sort of DNA or was created by them or something like that?
Well, it's actually even more interesting than that. So let me give you the perspective here. First, let's start with the term starseed. Unfortunately, in the UFO, New Age, and paranormal community, a lot of stuff is made up to create specialness and to create mystery and mystique, when the real truth is far more astounding than any of that. And again, unfortunately, in terms of UFOs and all of that, the field itself is filled with about 99% disinformation, misinformation, distractions, and all it's good for is entertainment. If the Meir case is true, it is the single most important event and discovery and story in all of human history. And yet people, think of it oftentimes as, well, it's another UFO story. No, it's not. It's unique for many reasons, which we can get into. But to answer your question, fundamentally, the reason that Meir was contacted is this, and I'm going to now resort to saying according to the information in the case, because this is information that neither I nor anybody else can prove, nor can they disprove. So here's what we're told. Meir is the seventh and final prophet for the earth. The six previous prophets, whom I'll name in a moment, all were in contact with some of the Pleiadian extraterrestrials, the same race that Meir's in contact with. Each of the six previous prophets were enlivened by a spirit or a spirit form, it's often said, that basically was the same spirit evolving over time. And the final incarnation of that spirit, the final reincarnation of it, is this Swiss man, Billy Meir. The six previous prophet contactees are known as Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, a name we're not usually familiar with, and that's the real name of the man falsely named Jesus Christ, which was a person who never existed, never walked the earth, and all you have to do is go to a library. Don't look for, religious material. Try and find a biography on Jesus Christ. There is no such thing because he didn't exist. Emmanuel, his life was changed into this story, and Emmanuel is actually mentioned in both the Old Testament, in Isaiah 7:14, and in the New Testament in Matthew 1:23. Meir is simply the final personality that carries the same spirit as these six previous ones, and his task is to bring into the world for the seventh and final time the original, true, ancient, spiritual teaching that was presented by each of the 6 previous prophets, but also in each case was altered, corrupted, falsified, and turned to some form of religion or other, which was made possible because most of the people of the time could not read or write. And so those who got a hold of the spiritual teaching when each prophet would bring it forward, those who could read and write changed it to suit their own agendas. Hence, we have what's known as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which are all, unfortunate to say, corruptions of the original spiritual teaching.
Man's laws, ways to keep us under control, is what religion is called by atheists, and I would think you would agree with that, right?
Pretty much. It's also completely, well, I'll put it this way. Religion requires faith and belief. That's very unscientific, and faith and belief is never proven to be true, because if something is true, it gets proven to be true. It doesn't take 5 or 2,500 or 5,000 years and still hanging out in the realm of beliefs with 1,000 or 4,000 different religions on the planet, all with variations of cockamamie beliefs and different gods, saints, and saviors and the rest of it. And all of it, though each one has some seeds of truth, believe me, if they only would adhere to the golden rule, that'd be fine. That's all we'd need from religion. But instead, we get beliefs and superstitions and rituals and fear of punishment and death and purgatory and hell and damnation and promises of imaginary heavens. So that is not truth. That's primitive superstitions that still exist to this day in these modern times and still rule the minds and thinking of far too many people, in my opinion.
Now, you said he was first contacted at age 5, and a lot of people who have been contacted or abducted usually talk about different kinds of races, for instance, the praying mantis or the infamous Greys. But these were human-looking extraterrestrials that are called Pleiadians, or you called them Pleiadiers, if I'm not mistaken?
Pleiadian. Well,
Pleiadian.
Let me clear that up just a little bit. First of all, there are no other verifiable, genuine UFO contactees on the planet. There is nobody who has produced one single verifiable piece of evidence to support those false claims. And I have challenged any and every so-called UFO contactee, expert, etc., to prove or to, come up against and debate me. Not one of them will, because, we don't have time any longer for niceties. They are liars, charlatans, and phonies who do that for whatever reasons they do. And anybody that objects to that, all they have to do is, bring the evidence forward. And that is not going to happen because there is no evidence. With the abductees, these are people who fall under certain categories, meaning if they've had any type of an experience, that experience has been one that was produced by military means. This is in other words, these so-called abductions and mutilations and everything else, these are strictly secret military things that occur. And it's too bad, but that's the way it is. Now, I forgot if there was more to that question you were going to say that you had put there, but I have to speak up about that because we are told all the time about such and such person is a contactee and they're a abductee and they're a this and that. No, and there are not zillions of different races visiting here, and not one of the people babbling about it, and I'll include people who are pathological liars such as Corey Goode and David Wilcock. Not one of them has any evidence whatsoever. They are profiteers, and in the case of Corey Goode, a self-admitted walking mind control experiment. Blue avians and praying mantis and all this is completely mythological nonsense. There is zero evidence for it. Now, that sounds like pretty harsh stuff, but any of those people want to take me on about it, I'll be glad to do it. Not one of them has been inconvenienced by even, and I'm glad to say it, nobody's tried to kill any of these phonies. Of course not. And Meir, who's dodged bullets and knives and everything else 23 times, of course, because he's telling the truth. And these people simply suppress the Meir case. And in the cases of Corey Goode and Wilcock, they steal information from it and try and make it their own. I'm speaking out harshly about this because the events that are coming to Earth, the events that are coming to us here in America and many other places are going to be monumental in scope. They are unstoppable. And these frauds and phonies in this UFO community have done more harm to people knowing the truth than even the government.
Well, fear definitely controls, and it also sells. And when I first heard about blue avians, the first thing that came to my mind was Big Bird walking around painted blue. And I sort of was like, okay, that doesn't really make any sense considering it's only coming from one source. And like you said, I don't want to publicly bash them, but that was one of the things that when I heard that lecture, when David Wilcock with Corey Goode gave it, Contact in the Desert, a few years ago, and he still does. I was sort of floored by it. I was like, blue avians, I've never, ever heard anyone talk about this. Now, you mentioned 23 attempts on his life as opposed to other people's lives. Switzerland, when I was there, I spent a good week, not long, but a good week. I saw it to be a very, very peaceful place. As a visitor, I thought if anyone was going to be mugged or anything like that, it would have been me. 23 attempts. I mean, you said bullets. He's dodged bullets and other things, and he lives from all the videos on a remote farm.
Right.
When was the first attempt on his life, and when was the most recent? I mean, because it's 23.
Well, the first, I'm not sure exactly. It's more than 40 years ago. Maybe 50 years ago, quite possibly, or so. I know that in 2012 of September, there was an attempt, and I think, I'm not sure if that was the most recent one or if there was another one that happened after that. And, it isn't usually just the ordinary Swiss that are trying to carry that out. I mean, some of the people that have done that may well be Swiss, but these are also attempts by people who are connected to either intelligence or military entities that try to do him in. And Meir, he's had some protection, obviously, from the Pleiadian people, but he's pretty much on his own now. And so he has to be very alert and careful, and he cannot go certain places, certain distances away from where he lives, because then he's not as likely to be as safe. And, people don't have to believe it or disbelieve it or anything else. I've seen bullet holes. I've interviewed witnesses to over 14 of the attempts. This isn't a joke. The problem, Dr. J, is that we're living in a world where, because of the internet to a great degree, which has provided wonderful access to many things, it's also made it very easy for idiotic and outright false stuff to be spread all over the place. And that's what's been done in terms of the Meir case. A lot of that material was generated by the intelligence agencies. It's picked up by the idiotic UFO community. It's picked up by specific people very often who have the agenda to keep the Meir material suppressed. And it's too bad that they've done that, because some of the things that have been foretold by Meir decades ago are now appearing in our news. And people are concerned. They've got no idea that the warnings came 37 years, almost 40 years ago on some of these things, and even longer ago on others. But now we are going to reap this largely because of the greed and the idiocy in this, paranormal New Age UFO community that wants to just be entertained. And these are people that I say, well, if that's all you want, please don't come around me, because I have things to do, and you're going to be a big drain because you're lost in fantasy, and I don't need to be involved with that. So we are going to face 2 civil wars in this country. I first read that myself in 86 from Meir's 1981 information. He published it again in 87. I was laughing about it at the time, thinking how preposterous. Now, everybody from Alex Jones to Pat Buchanan, from the people on the left and right and center are all bandying about this talk about civil war. We're in it. We're in the beginning phases of it. Meir foretold it. It's not going to be pretty, and it's only going to keep compounding. Probably around 2020, the country's going to be in a state of close to anarchy. Many things are coming, including a global financial collapse, which is going to shatter people's lives everywhere. But in this country, people are going to be literally dispossessed. So there's an awful lot here. And people, who are interested in ufology, they never get to this point. They never realize, now that you've arrived with the truth, don't you think you want to stop running around dabbling in all this UFO nonsense and find out the reason for these contacts going on for over 76 years? Don't you want to know why these people have contacted Meir and what he's tried to get to you? So I have pretty much utter contempt for the majority of the UFO world.
When I saw, he has several videos, but one of them specifically that looks like Bob Lazar's sports model he described, and he actually had someone paint it. He commissioned the painting of it. Bob Lazar has no real proof. He can't say that he was there. I mean, he could say anything he wants, but he really can't prove it. But he's actually never wavered from his story. The one thing that he said publicly that really stuck in my mind, that made the link between Billy Meir and Bob Lazar, is that Bob Lazar said that through all the UFO footage he's ever seen, through all the pictures and anything, and even drawings he's ever seen, the sports model is what he called it, the one that he worked at, one of the 9 ships at S4. He said the only video was Billy Meir's. He said that was a spitting image exactly of what he worked on. And he said either exactly what Billy has been saying has happened to him, or he's got to be the biggest fraud, which if he is the biggest fraud, how would he even know what Bob Lazar did decades before? So I tend to think that obviously that lends more credence to it, because a lot of people believe Bob Lazar, even though he has yet to be able to prove anything. There's no pictures of him at S4. There's no actual material or anything like that. But regardless, the one, I know you know which beam ship I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's now he's gotten several different ones. I remember one that looked like a sombrero, one that looked like really sleek one rocking back and forth. And I had a friend who does not believe in this at all. And we were watching some videos from Billy Meir. And I remember seeing that craft rock back and forth. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is some of the greatest footage I've seen. And my friend says, that's just on a string. If you put something on a string and push it, I'm like, first of all, where the heck's the string? And how could he create something so big? Look at everything else in the frame. And what was he using? A 16mm camera at the time when he was filming this? 8mm. I don't understand how people can think that he faked things like this. And like you said, he's got one arm. Right. Poor guy's got one arm. I mean, why would he want to become public enemy for people who are against UFOs? Why would he want to put himself in, the name of the public domain with such a negative attitude or anything like that if it wasn't true? Those are questions I've always asked, and again, lead credence to it. Now, for you yourself, when you started, you said you've investigated for 40 years, and then when you visited him 4 times in Switzerland, and he's had 7 prophecies, and the 7th one you said he just said has.
Well, not quite. First of all, I've actually visited him 19 times in total.
19 times in total.
And we have corroborated over 200 specific prophetic examples of Meir's information, over 200, with no erroneous prophecies and predictions. So this is what people don't know. They simply are lost in thinking that they know something. People have to understand something, and that goes for everybody that listens to these kinds of shows and all. They don't know anything about this. They're not. The majority of people are not expert in anything, and that they think they know anything at all about real extraterrestrial technology would be funny if they weren't so lost in their own silliness. Of course, nobody knows about that. Meir's information. Look, I've had a special effects company that won the Academy Award for Independence Day. I personally brought Meir's films to them. Right away, they said, look, unless this is CG, and whoa, it can't be. This is 1976. Well, he couldn't do this unless he had like a crane and all this stuff. And then even before that, the man who was the special effects director for the film 2001, he analyzed Meir's films. He said the same thing. He even said, look, I could duplicate this film, but I need 15 people, $80,000. You're going back to 1978. And he says, so if you're telling me that a man with one arm did this, I'm sorry, this is not a hoax. So people are to their own detriment. They are lost in illusions. They're lost with nonsense. And I feel badly because so many people are going to be just thrown absolutely into complete loss of
chaos too.
Chaos is right. They won't know what the heck hit them. They're just not going to know because look, we've tried to wake people up, but all this idiocy from the David Wilcox and Richard Nolans and the Corey Goods and the Dolans and Nolans and all these other people who think that they know something. All they know is that they are pumping out garbage in order to sell books. It's just that simple. I wish it was not that, but it is. And any one of them who wants to confront me on it and wants to back up their claims that they're telling the truth, I'll be glad to take them on, and I'll take them on your show. I'll take them on publicly. Your phone will not be ringing off the hook from all these phonies. So it's just unfortunate. Look, if an advanced space traveling race has actually contacted somebody on this planet, there's got to be a reason for it. It's not so idiots can sell books on UFOs. The reason is to help us assure our own very threatened future survival. That's the reason. And we have failed to pay attention. It's going to be very not pretty from here on.
You talked about 200 prophecies that he's made and not one being false or negative. Can you talk about some that came true recently?
Oh my gosh, there's just so many of these things. Hold on. Let me think. Well, some of it, I don't have it right in front of me. I can try to bring some of this up, of course, but part of what happened was there's information on Mars. There's information on the dangers to the human brain from space travel. Both of these things were recently corroborated, and Meir verifiably published them 30 plus years ago. There's information, goodness, there's so much on wandering black holes, on the nature of the speed of gravity, the speed of light, the black hole at the center of our solar system. It goes on and on and on and on. And how to get advance warning on volcanic eruptions. I could start to read them. I could go to a page where we've got 150 of them and just read them one after another, and it'll blow your mind. People should do that for themselves so that they understand what we're talking about here, that they can read for themselves. And what we did is we would publish, and we still do this, we publish what Billy Meir said, and then we publish the so-called new discovery. And we can prove that Meir published it beforehand. That should drive every one of your listeners and everybody else in the whole entire world to their computers and to scratching their heads and sitting down and finally thinking, why? How did this happen? Wow, how come I never knew about this before? And that's, we're trying to get through to people, but it's very hard.
Now, when you said he had his first encounter at age 5, was he visited by a being, or did he see a craft? And did he even know it was non-terrestrial? Because age 5, you're sort of young before the age of accountability. Your consciousness isn't fully built there yet, things like that. So what was his first impression?
Sure. Well, what happened was he and his father saw a large silver disc flying overhead. He asked his father, "What's that?" His father said, "I don't know. I think it could be a secret weapon of Hitler's. It's possible." And, so they said, okay, well, it's pretty weird. And then it was a short time later that he got telepathically, he heard the voice of an elderly man speaking to him inside his head. And he was puzzled by this. I mean, this is 1942 in, rural Switzerland is not the most sophisticated place and most advanced time and all that. And then shortly after that, he was outside and he felt kind of compelled to go into the forest deeper and to, just wander in. He felt this drawing towards it. And there was a clearing in the forest, and a pear-shaped craft had set down on 3 strut-like legs, and standing next to it was an elderly-looking man, appeared to be like in his 90s. He was actually over 900. He was wearing what Billy described as looking kind of like a deep-sea diver suit without a helmet. And that was the first meeting with this man, face-to-face, voluntarily, wide awake, which began 11 years of mentoring with this man, Svath. And then, of course, there would be other teachers in his life, but that was the beginning. And within a 2-year period of time, with the help of this man and the technologies that they had, young Edward Albert Meir, which was his given name at the time, had the thinking capacity of a 35-year-old man. And so he also had a lot of problems from that because, his life got complicated. He's a young 5, 6, 7-year-old Swiss boy going to school, little rural religious community. And here he is meeting with a man from another world who's taking him above the earth and showing him things. And, it's just like having to reconcile that. It created great difficulties for him in certain ways. And, of course, unimaginably wonderful experiences.
Now, I have a question here already, but I know you already answered it. So, again, it says, is Billy still being visited today?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I knew that. I just wanted to throw it out there to tell the listener that, hey, we're paying attention to them too. Now, this gentleman, the older gentleman that had telepathic thoughts into Billy's mind, did he have a name?
Yes, his name was Svath, S-F-A-T-H, Svath. And, we can't do much with that because it's not a name that we're very familiar with. We don't have it in our world. And that was it. That was his name. And he taught Billy and took Billy into many places and times in the past and future. And he showed him many, many things to prepare him for his particular mission. And by the way, the people, the Andrew Basagios and all the rest that claim that they've gone to Mars or time traveled, they're all just unrepentant liars, and they have no proof, of course, but they rely on the gullibility of people who are interested in this stuff to sell their garbage stories and just basically clog up the airwaves with lies and cover up the truth.
Now, the name that I always remember is Semyazi, but if that comes later down the line, we'll get to that when we come in that timeline. So after Svath, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, there was other context with other people, other people from the Pleiadian star system. And by the way, where is the Pleiadian star system?
Well, let's clear that up too. The Pleiades that we see in the night sky, I think that's about 500 light years from here. And that is not where these people come from. They come from a place beyond that by 80 light years. There is no life in the Pleiades, so hence there are no Pleiadians. That is a screen name that was made up. I think January 28th, 1975, Meir was told to use that name when referring to them. And he said, well, why? That's not what you're called. And they said, well, that's right. We're not called that. But once you, Billy, start publishing your information and your photographs and everything, people are going to be coming forward claiming that they're meeting with us, that we're taking them on board the ships and blah, blah. And everybody that mentions the word Pleiadian will be identifying themselves as liars. So you'll know we're not having any contacts with anybody but you.
So, that 500 light years, I mean, we couldn't even get there even if we had some sort of robot that was self-generating. And I would think at the speed that we can get to, we couldn't even get to a light second, let a light year, the maximum speed. So 500 light years would probably be somewhere in the millions, I would think. And do you subscribe to the fact that these craft that are coming from these faraway star systems are not traveling in a straight line, but rather through a wormhole, or better known as an Einstein-Rosen bridge, or basically bending space and time and creating that hole?
Right. Well, let me first say that I am not an expert myself in physics, time travel, et cetera, like that. Of course, there are no experts in time travel, perhaps except other than Meir, who are living on Earth. But they did say that their technology is such, they described it in a way that kind of amounted to this. Their technology allows them to pinpoint a time and a place that they want to go, and then move their craft at above light speed by many, many, many times to that place. They also claim that they now have instantaneous transmission technologies that do not require spacecraft. So this is, this is the kind of stuff, it's very interesting, but we can't do anything with it. We can't do anything with it. We can do something with the prophecies, the predictions, the spiritual teaching, if we will only pay attention. The rest of it, I don't focus on, because the rest of it is simply interesting. It does not give us anything we can work with other than to roll it around in our imaginations. But we are facing unparalleled environmental destruction coming our way through mega quakes and mega eruptions in America and other places, undersea volcanoes that are going to become active soon, the disappearance of some land masses because of these eruptions. We are going to face ultimately phenomenal shutdowns of our abilities to grow food. The damage from Fukushima, which Meir was told about within mere days of its occurring, is now being slowly revealed. It is beyond imagination. The Japanese continue to stonewall on it, but we have parts of the oceans that are now dead and will be for 1 million years. We have massive contamination in the seas and in the air, etc., from this radiation and from other things. We are so inundated, and this is why I say to people, well, okay, space travel, time travel, very nice, interesting. We have the information so that people can know it, but we would best back up to when Meir began himself to warn about man-made climate change, unnatural global war, 1951. 1951, it'll be in a couple of years, it'll be 70 years from now. The ozone damage, the atomic explosions that damage the ozone, and I mean, one thing after another. In 1981, he was specifically told about some eruptions that would come into the Hawaiian Islands by 1983, but that after that there would be another major volcanic eruption later on, and that's Kilauea. They've spilled out so many things, and we just sit around with it. I don't know where people have put their brains. They've lost themselves playing with their techno toys, and their very lives don't mean anything to them. So what can you do?
And the worst part is, you talked about the Pacific Ocean and all our oceans being damaged. I know for years after Fukushima, literally about 6 months is when the debris first started to hit the California coast. And from then on, obviously, I started being weary of the fish in the Pacific Ocean. But now I don't think it matters where you are, whether you're in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, you're still going to be affected by what's happening with Fukushima. And like you said, what we've been doing to our atmosphere is another thing which manifests itself by these humongous earthquakes and volcanoes. I've never seen in my entire life, or even read in history, so many quakes 9.0 or bigger or 8.9 or bigger in such a short span of years. It's mind-boggling. And it begs the question, like you said, is it our technologies causing it? Is it stupidity causing it? Or are we undergoing some massive changes on this earth that we should be paying attention to?
Well, you've hit on something very important. For instance, on my blog, I have posted an article from 1948 from Svath, Meir's teacher, 1948. He specifically foretells, he says also after 2015 and 2017 is when the really large quakes and eruptions will begin. And he says, in central Italy, earthquakes will start to occur that will be occurring before the major eruptions of Mount Vesuvius, Mount Etna, Mount Stromboli, Mount Marsili, and the Campi Flegrei. And those quakes have already started. Vesuvius started to have a small eruption, and Etna started to show signs of it. This stuff is about to occur. It'll be within the next couple years or less that these things start, going off. And then in northern Germany, he was warned in 1948, there's something called the Eiffel Fields in Germany. That is a huge caldera like Campi Flegrei and Yellowstone. These are three huge calderas, all of which are going to erupt. And they will cause massive change on the earth. And then there is, of course, the Cumbre Vieja volcano in the Canary Islands, which will with certainty erupt. And unless certain precautions are taken, which it looks like they won't be, the tidal wave, the tsunami from that eruption will penetrate up to 12 miles inland along our east coast and will possibly kill as many as 20 million people. And we have what may occur before that, the Northwest Cascadian Subduction Zone quake. Now people are aware of the warnings about that, but the warnings about that quake in the Northwest and the tsunami that's coming with that, they were published by Oregon State University in 2008. But in 2005, on my website, we have Meir's information warning about it 3 years before our scientists discovered it. It goes on and on and on like this. Why anybody thinks that there's anything to be learned from all these so-called UFO cases and they can't grasp what's going on right here, it's not a good sign.
A lot of people claim that factions of our government, specifically like the government that controls the government or secret government or the oligarchs that are really in charge of everything, know about these programs, are in contact with these beings, have this technology, and are covering it up. What do you think about that?
They're not in contact with these beings. For instance, the Pleiadians offered contact to the Carter administration in 1979. It was turned down, and they simply said that will be the last outreach to America, to the people of Earth. Officially, we cannot deal with people this stupid and this, et cetera, et cetera. There are no governments that are actually in touch, certainly not with the Pleiadians, and there's no evidence they're in touch with anybody else. See, this is the kind of disinformation that, people get all excited about, because you'll hear David Wilcock with his moronic statements about what he thinks he knows about the secret aliens. These people are lunatics. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They've either been thoroughly mind-controlled themselves, as we know that Corey Goode has, or they just keep on spinning more yarns to keep their stupid profiteering going. They're pathological liars. There's no evidence, and there's no sane space-traveling race that would have any reason to be in contact, let alone in any way communicating with militaristic, aggressive, violent-prone parties and governments like the U.S. They've gone far beyond. Why? This is what people never ask. Well, why would any extraterrestrials be? To control the people. Look, if extraterrestrials exist and they wanted to control the Earth, how long would that take?
Seconds.
Yes, exactly. We'd be done. They could shut down all communication, everything. And, you know, this is why it's so sad that people make themselves stupid and fall for all of this nonsense from these charlatans, these phonies and profiteers, a company like Gaia TV that just churns this stuff out to make a buck. All of the people, you look at the corporations, the people that are involved in these companies, these are all refugees from big corporations who decided they wanted to make money with a sure thing. So they scoped out the New Age paranormal UFO market, realized that the people were beyond stupid and gullible, and they got a hold of a couple of shills, at least, like Corey Good and David Wilcock, and they start cranking out absolute nonsense while the people of this country it's a ticking time bomb, what's coming here. And instead they're worried about reptilians and praying mantises and gosh knows what, grasshoppers and frogs that they think are extra. I mean, could anything be more stupid? How did people buy into this crap?
We humans are very destructive in nature, and I would think that, like you said, the Carter administration denied it. They probably were thinking, wow, this is advanced. If they can come in and out of our airspace without detecting, or they have all this technology that we can use, how can we use it to our benefit? For instance, go back to 1945. We split the atom. What's the first thing we do? We make a bomb. And then not only do we launch one, we launch a second one, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, that just shows the nature of us humans. So do you think there's any fear from these Pleiadians?
No, it's not that. They know that, you know, that we have a large number of humans who are insane that way, who are psychopathic, pathological lunatics. And there's a lot of good people on Earth. I mean, we shouldn't negate that. And even Meir and Clarence say, you know, there's many good people in every country, but they're powerless to do anything because the rulers are generally just outrageous psychopaths who fool people into thinking that they're on their side. They get into power, and then everything goes downhill. They're not afraid of us and our weapons by any stretch of the imagination. They're afraid for us. They know that the danger to the human beings of Earth is extreme because of all of this crazy technology and it being in the hands of people who are immature and pathological and just dangerous to life. There's no guarantee that we survive. Understand that. There's no guarantee that we survive because people are giving up their power. Billy Meir in 1958 foretold the biochipping. That has already started. People are thinking it's a wonderful thing. They'll get a biochip so they can go buy their groceries or get their gasoline. That's how stupid human beings can be. They are being enslaved. This is an agenda. Meir warned about it 60 years ago. It is already taking root in Sweden and other places, even in Florida, different places where they're selling the idiots who just want to have techno toys in their life because they don't have a real life. They're selling them the beauty of being biochipped like dogs and cats, and they're going for it.
I've actually seen a story about that. People are voluntarily doing it to make their life, quote unquote, easy. And I'm thinking, why would you want to do that? And like you said, these people, there's almost 8 billion people on this planet. If we're not at 8, we will be very soon, based on the metrics of looking at every year, how we've gone up from 6 billion about 20 some years ago, or at 20 years ago. But the Georgia Guidestones say that a proper population for this planet is 500 million people, not to exceed that. Do you think that part of the reasons that they're using things like destroying us or introducing diseases or chemicals or like this biochipping is a way to control the population? Because there's going to come a time when, like you said, in 2020, when things go really bad with that, global financial problem, a lot of people, when that happens, tend to do harsh things. They turn to crime. Sadly, some turn to suicide, and others turn to faith. It all varies on who the person is. But people generally don't take losing everything they've worked for their entire life to lose it all in one shot. And I fear that's what's going to happen if this 2020 prediction is going to be true. Now, one quick question that I did forget to actually ask, which is from another listener. Some people think or say that the human-looking extraterrestrials, like the Pleiadians, are actually time travelers of us in the future. What do you say about that?
Well, let me again try to clarify this way. We have no evidence of another race. Not to say that there have been races that have come and gone on this planet over hundreds of thousands and millions of years. All that information's in the Meir case. But there's no extraterrestrials coming and meeting with anybody. There is a future Earth human race observing us, but they're not the Pleiadians. They're another race of future Earth humans. They are not interacting with us. They're not contacting anybody. They're not channeling anybody, at least according to the most recent information from Meir. And if they, give us information that updates that and says it's changed, I'll be glad to relay it. But there are apparently future Earth time travelers, but the Pleiadians are not them.
Now, again, going back to after he talked with Svath, the older gentleman, what was the next extraterrestrial or Pleiadian figure? Again, how we're connecting, like you said, there's no evidence of what these people are suggesting, but what was the next person who started giving him guidance and started giving him advice, basically, to how to survive as being someone chosen as a prophet on this planet in spite of what else is going on with all the violence and everything around him and all of us, actually, all humans?
Right. Well, the next person was a woman. Her name is given as Asket, A-S-K-E-T, and she's not a Pleiadian. She is of what we might call it a sister race from an adjoining universe, a twin universe to ours. It's not a mirror image. It's not like we're over there and we're over here. It's another universe. The people of her race have worked with and been in touch with the Pleiadians for a very long time. She became Meir's contact person for the next 11 years. And so she was the second contact person. She and Meir had a lot of interesting information and adventures that are written up about them and what they did and how, what he was taught by her and where he was taken and stuff like that. So that was the second contact person.
I always use the word multiverse because you can't say we're one universe in other dimensions. And I would hope that mathematicians this is ironic. Some people say there's multiple dimensions. It's unlimited. We can't even fathom how many there are. That's why there's all these different universes for each dimension. Some mathematicians theorize there's 11. I don't know where they got the number 11 from, but that sure doesn't make any sense to me. But regardless, would you agree that the term multiverse is better served as opposed to universe when talking about all of the cosmos and all the different dimensions, including, like you said, Eskets?
Well, I don't know that it is or isn't. Let me further clarify, and maybe this will give you an idea about it. The Pleiadians have said that we are in a universe that of its own, and there's a twin adjoining universe, the one that Asket comes from. However, in this universe alone, there are many, let's say, dimensions, right?
Yes.
Well, there are billions upon billions of universes. We cannot even we can't fathom it. Billions of universes outside of our universe. So there may be many dimensions in our universe, many time-space configurations, whatever you call it. But we're talking about in the greater reality that outside of our universe, there are billions of others. And we don't even have the right age for our universe. We get this 14 billion years old. This universe is said to be 47 trillion years old, and that it's going to exist like for another 100 trillion years before it comes back in on itself and then births again, and all these cycles. Now, these are fascinating things. We can't prove it, can't disprove it. I again, and people can read all of that in the Meir material. And, you know, we have people who are astrophysicists, we have people who are aerospace engineers, military investigators, who are into the Meir case, and they know it's real, and they speak up for it. I simply say, look, if you want to read and learn the most amazing information you will ever find, that's what you want to do. Is you want to read the info in the Meir case. There's thousands of pages, tens of thousands. But I caution people to please start to pay attention to this prophetic information, because this was a very important part of these contacts, the purpose of which was to help us survive. And all the rest of this wonderful stuff, some of it we're going to have to put on the back burner, because if we don't survive, it won't mean anything to us.
Very well said, and I want you to hold that thought, Mr. Horn. Everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we got another full hour with Mr. Michael Horn. We're going to be talking about Billy Meir and Mr. Horn's work. Stay right back. Stay there. I'll be right back.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
Data. The sensors can't penetrate the planet's ionosphere. There's too much interference. Can you find a way to scan for life forms?
I would be happy to, sir. I just love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you?
Even the ETs know this is the place to be. L&M Radio Network.
You can listen to the L&M Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from lnmradionetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
Ever wanted to be sure your robot slave was behaving? Is Echo getting out of control and meeting with Alexa when you're not around? You need RoboGrog. RoboGrog is the new product from Snooze You Lose, the company that also brought you the fine products of Flog a Horse and Calm You Down Now. RoboGrog will put your robotic minions to sleep, bringing their AI a sense of peace and comfort. It does this by sending bolts of electricity straight where the sun doesn't shine. Get RoboGrog today at any fine retailer and set yourself free from the devices that bind you.
You can't just throw someone into prison and silence their warning because you don't agree with them. You don't have to like my methods or what I stand for. Silencing me won't make the problem go away. It will just whittle away at the ability of people to be ready for the real threats. And when the worst happens, and it will, maybe you can take comfort in protecting the people from a dangerous radical who wanted to tell them the truth.
Tired of searching for great talk and great information? Look no more. L&M Radio Network, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Back home, there's a growing pro-Earth movement. rumors of hate groups targeting aliens. And on all sides, the fanatics think that society has to be protected against anyone who's different. I'm starting to wonder if what we just saw is a preview of things to come.
No, I can't believe we'd be that foolish. Santayana. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Okay. Okay, welcome back to the second hour of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, if you didn't already notice that. We have been speaking to Mr. Michael Horn. Michael Horn is the official or an authorized American media representative for Billy Meir, one of the most fascinating cases that has stood the test of time. To this day, still being talked about. And during the break, I even had some more questions that came through from some listeners that I will definitely ask Mr. Horn. But actually here, you know what? I'm going to switch gears for a second, and we're going to get off Billy for one quick second and go to Mr. Horn. Michael, I want to ask you, what, if any, have you had any UFO experiences either with Billy or without Billy?
Well, actually, I've had a total of 7 sightings. I'm convinced that at least 4 of them, maybe 5, were secret military craft. But when I lived in the mountains of Brazil about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that, I did have a close sighting within 20 feet of a small Pleiadian monitoring craft. So happened I was scheduled to go see Billy the next weekend in Switzerland, and he confirmed that that indeed had been one of the small craft. A lot of people in Switzerland have seen those craft, and someone in 1989 accidentally captured 2 of them in a photograph that was taken while people were working on the property there. When the film was developed, there were these 2 glowing orb, but not just like a flimsy thing, but like really strong glowing white orbs, broad daylight, objects that were radiating a lot of light, and they were virtually identical to what I saw in Brazil up there in the mountains. So it's interesting, but it doesn't matter because there's nothing any of us can do with UFOs. It's just like, okay, fascinating, but what's the reason? What's the point? And that's why I always come back to saying, people, we have been warned and warned and warned. And unfortunately, all of the people who've just suppressed and diverted this information for their own profit, they potentially are responsible for the loss of a lot of life and a lot of pain for people in the time to come.
You actually just answered a question that someone had about witnesses. Were any other witnesses? Were there any around when Billy had any of his sightings or visitations? And you just mentioned the 1989 photographs of these 2 glowing orbs, and I've seen glowing orbs here from someone here in Southern California who has some sort of contact, but definitely not to the extent that Mr. Meir has. But any other witnesses aside from the 1980s?
Gosh, there's well over 125, 130, 40, whatever eyewitnesses. People, and a lot of these are people who've had multiple sightings, some of them when they were with Meir, some of them on their own, some when they're with each other. There's 5 other photographers who photographed the craft. This is the whole thing. And instead we get this garbage in the U.S., the MUFON, the Tom DeLonge utter hoax that is, and the equally offensive hoax from Wilcock and Good, and you just name it. These people are they're just ripping everybody off, and people have become stupidly gullible that they fall for it instead of demanding truth. You want to get any of these people to debate me? I'll wipe the floor with them. Why? Because they don't have any evidence, and we're overflowing with evidence. We've got more independent authentication of Meir's photos, his films, his video, his metal samples, his sound recordings, and all of these clowns have nothing but tall tales. It's really pathetic.
You just answered a major question, all those witnesses having more and more sightings, but you talked about something about the United States with MUFON, which leads to a very important question. And clearly this is speculation, but I have to ask it anyway. Do you have an idea why we're so dumbed down here, or why people take the Billy Meir case and just throw it out the gutter?
Well, yeah, those are connected phenomena. We're dumbed down here. The reason for it is to control people. As I said, one of the things that Meir has spelled out, Meir told me 12 years ago, I asked him in 2006, I said, Billy, was the fundamental reason for the Iraq War oil? And he said, no. The fundamental reason is connected to the U.S. dollar. And if things go a certain way, you may as well roll cigarettes with your paper money. Translation, financial collapse coming. That's 2006, long before all the talk that now people are having about trouble. But Meir spelled it out a month ago. There is going to be a global financial collapse that'll make the Great Depression look like a party. It's going to just fracture everything. We'll go to a cashless society. Meir points out as well that when all of this stuff is really impacting people in the U.S. and they start to rebel, the government will turn the military and the police against, and this term I quote, the partly heavily armed populace. People will be dispossessed in America of everything. I have a video up on my YouTube channel where Meir says the minority, meaning the people who are intelligent and aware and awake, can do nothing. It is the majority, the power-hungry ones, who are going to ruin everything, who will crush the ordinary people and any chance of their prospering. Right now, and we're not political. We don't care whether it's Trump or this one or that. We're not Democrats, Republicans. So people on the right will say something about how wonderful the economy is and blah, blah. Well, Meir has said, look out. And there's a couple financial analysts. There's one guy who doesn't live in the States. He's an American, but he's an expat. And he's very smart. And he has said, this thing is going to be coming down, and it's not going to be all that long until it does. And he's echoing so much of the stuff that Meir has written, and he doesn't know anything about Meir. We are fooled and dumbed down so we can be controlled. Remember, I said this whole thing with the biochipping. In the 1958 document, Meir tells us the USA and the EU will be in partnership to try to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth to control everybody. And you can just see how easily it's going to be. Look at all the people that have allowed themselves to put nose rings. I'm saying this for a reason. Nose rings belong on animals like cows or whatever that can be led around by the ring in their nose. Look at all the people that just have, because other people have done it, they pierce themselves or they tattoo themselves or something. And I'm talking to you as someone who in 1963, I tried to start the body art fad in Chicago. And when I moved to New York in 1967, I started one of the longest running fads. It still goes on. It's called fingernail art. All the designs in fingernail. I'm the person that started it. Yet I can see from what Meir's saying, people are just allowing themselves to be dumbed down, made to be docile so they can be led around and intimidated. And you will have the crazies on the left and the crazies on the right eventually in full-blown civil war here in America. And it's already underway.
Civil war, definitely, especially since 2016, actually, even before the 2016 election. And now you have people like Antifa. Rallies are no longer just rallies. I mean, they are literally very, very destructive. And even Governor Dukakis, when he was on recently, was saying, this is a time that we have to worry about because our country is very divided. And he compared it not as bad as a civil war quite yet, but I can definitely see it. I just don't think it'll be North versus South anymore, but I could definitely see people within their own cities, neighbors fighting with each other, and that is never good for anybody. However, war is good for the economy, and that's a very scary thought.
That's what we have to understand, and this is in the Meir material. It's all in here. Stuff about our own history we know nothing about, even American history. But this is a country that is based on war, aggression, and violence as foundational operating principles. Does it mean that everybody's bad? No, it just means that those who are in charge, this is the agenda. And so what they do is they promote war economy, they promote war for the sake of war and aggression. Everything we do in our foreign policy is designed to dominate other people in other countries. Iran, Iraq, and the whole fabricated thing with Russia. Russia doesn't want any trouble with us. Meir was told in June of 2016 that Donald Trump is going to win the election. It's going to surprise a lot of people. And they also told him, do not publicize this. Wait until after the election. He said, well, why can't I say something now to people that are interested? He said, because if you mention that Donald Trump will win the presidency, they will assassinate him. It'll be people from the Democrat Party and the Secret Services. They'll kill him. And then Meir was told after the election, there will be a phony attempt to try to get him out of office based on a concocted Russia story. I mean, this is in the Meir material. And they said, well, we don't know how it's going to turn out, but this is going to happen. And they said, some things that he supports are good. Some are very, very bad. He's very bad on environmental issues. He's very bad on, providing health care for the population. He's good about wanting to keep out of globalization and protecting the country. But, they will probably in the same way that they did with Obama and with every other president, they'll get to him and they'll turn him into, their tool to do what they want. This insane funding of a military, if people in America don't have any perspective, in case you don't know it, to our left or west, however you're looking at the country, we are between us and the next nations is a huge ocean. To our right or our east, between us and the next countries is a huge ocean. We have no actual natural, significantly strong military opponents. We have no enemies. We're making enemies everywhere, of course. But so we have the largest military and military funding in the world. Combine everybody, and that's our military funding. That's the racket that runs this country. And that is, certainly it's in the Meir material, that's going to bring us down. And we've been warned in the Hanok prophecies, we're warned by Meir, do not provoke Russia. Do not try to get into a war with Russia. And the reason Meir has said that, and we have videos up about that, is because we're not going to win that conflict. Now, while it could be said that nobody would win a nuclear war, it is specifically stated that we lose that, and that the loss is a total destruction from coast to coast of what we call the United States of America or America, a complete destruction of our country if the lunatics, the military, industrial, governmental lunatics, keep pushing this fable and provoke Russia into a war. Don't forget, it's not just Russia, even though they're actually militarily vastly more advanced than we give them credit for. It's China with a billion troops. This is insanity. So, if somebody tunes into this program now, they're talking, well, why are people talking about, I thought this was about UFOs. People get a clue why Meir was contacted and the kind of information that he himself has not only predicted himself, but has been given. The destruction of this country was foretold by the prophet Enoch and the prophet Jeremiah. That goes back over 11,000 years ago. Those prophecies and predictions are on my website, theyfly.com. Get educated. Forget UFOs. There's nothing as useless right now as focusing on UFOs. I have to tell you the truth. The UFOs are real. The Meir case, it's the best UFO evidence you'll ever see. It's real. I just had a former United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation, expert investigator, who a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, came at me as a skeptic, and then a year ago, August, publishes with us a document on my blog, and he puts his credibility on the line. The Billy Meir UFO contacts are 100% ironclad, and he will take on any skeptics that would like the debate. It's basically stopped any kind of a, so-called skeptical argument. No, what skeptics can answer it? They can't. This guy, he as high a ranking person as you can get as an investigator in the military protecting the United States, and he comes at me as a skeptic. And this guy and I, we speak every Saturday morning. He's an expat. He lives in Asia now. And he says, I know Billy's true. He said, I went after I proved to myself, and anybody wants to read it, why the Meir case is authentic. He said, I looked at every video of Billy on YouTube, wherever I could find it. That's the most honest man I've ever seen. I have vetted hundreds of people, whether they be military or political people aspiring to higher office, ferreting out spies and moles in the government. Billy Meir is the most honest human being I've ever seen myself. I put my credentials, my own credibility behind that. And people want to talk about Corey Goode and David Wilcock and their imaginary BS?
Here in the United States, we use a jury system in court, 12 people. But polygraphs are constantly used by police to deter, or anything for that matter, to determine if someone is lying or not lying. And those can be beat as well. The problem is if the police use them, but courts don't use them, then obviously there's a dichotomy which shows there's flaws. So the question then becomes, has anyone ever asked Billy Meir to take a polygraph exam?
Well, actually, it turns out that in the late 70s, Meir and about 16 other people there, who are all witnesses, took voice stress analysis tests, a form of polygraph. Every one of the people, Meir included, passed 100% honest, no stress for trickery. But again, in all fairness, there's lots of, talk about polygraphs not being accurate. They're not being admissible. And here you talked about courts. A few years back, I was in, where was it? Las Vegas, at a MUFON event of all things. They'd given me a table to have books and DVDs. And I'll tell people how they can get this stuff in a moment themselves. So this guy comes walking over to my table there. He's a kind of late middle-aged, kind of crusty, tough-looking guy. And he's shaking his head left to right like, no, no, no. His arms are folded in front of him. So I said to the guy, can I help you, sir? Well, I'm interested in UFOs, but I think this Billy Meir case, I think this could be a big hoax. I said, okay. I said, what do you do? He says, I'm a retired judge. I said, really? I said, Your Honor, could I step in your courtroom for a moment? And he was really cool. He said, yes. How can I help you? So I turned to him and I said, Your Honor, if I tell you that NASA's claim that they are the first ones to discover conclusively the reason for the contraction of the surface of Mercury, if I tell you that that claim is 32 years too late because my buddy in Switzerland, he discovered that long before, 32 years before, would I have to prove that to you? And he looks at me and he kind of scowls. He says, of course you'd have to prove it. So I just happened to have the book. I reached over and I opened up this book and I brought it in front between the judge and myself. And I said, Your Honor, do you see this copyright date? Oh, yes, I do. I said, okay, now bear with me. I'm going into this book. And I knew where this information was that I was interested in. And I said, Your Honor, can you see here where even about 12 years earlier in this conversation, we've got an outside copyright date, about 1980. And this conversation took place in about, 1976, 16 years earlier. And Billy Meir asks this woman, Semyaze, that you mentioned, He asks her, he says, I've always wanted to know something. Can you tell me why the surface of the planet Mercury is contracting? And she said, well, yes, of course, it's easy. It's because of the metal core. Well, that's what NASA claimed in 2012 or whatever it was. And so I turned to the judge and I said, Your Honor, in your courtroom, who prevails? And he said, you do. How much is the book? How much is the tape? How much is the DVD? Blah, blah, blah. Because he understood something that most people don't. And they should start to learn it real quick. It's very simple. Copyrights are the internationally recognized standard of proof of first or prior publication. That means when you see a copyright, such as on these books and documents that are in the Meir case, that means that that copyright proves that that information was published then. Now, no copyright proves that information is accurate. It just means it was published first. Well, we have so many of these specific prophetically accurate examples covered by copyrights that it's a done deal. There is no doubt. Meir has scooped NASA sometimes by 60 years because the Pleiadians gave him the information. Don't you think, from what you're hearing tonight, that you want to find out if what I'm saying is true? You can do it yourself. You don't have to believe a darn thing. And I have a website that is theyfly.com. I have a blog, but I'll tell you about the website. On the website, I've got a shop. And I have books by Meir with the spiritual teaching in English, half in English, half of the books in German. So if you read German, you can read it in the original. They're brilliant. They're the most amazing things you'll ever read. I have DVDs on the films I've made on the Meir case. There's probably 5 of those. I have other things with presentations at all these UFO events in the past when they weren't afraid to have me come and speak. Nowadays, they won't for the most part because it'll ruin everything, because they have to bring in all these phonies with their BS UFO stories so they can sell tickets, and they think it wouldn't be interesting enough to have the singular truth. Oh, well. So I've got Meir's books. I've got DVDs. I've got videos of presentations. I've got CD ebooks, all that stuff. So here's the thing. If you go to my site, theyfly.com, and you go into the shop and you see something you want, like a book or a DVD, if you order that, you have to make that at least one order, and you put the words Dr. J in your order, I'll send you another free CD or DVD. Just that simple. Order something, a book, a DVD, a CD, I'll send you another free one. That's all. So this way you get to get current and caught up. And I'll also add that I answer all my email. It takes a while, but I do. And I answer any questions and any challenges, because they're pretty easy. Usually the show where you can find the information. So the second and last part of this particular pitch is I have a blog. And my blog is called theyflyblog.com. We discuss all this stuff, and my blog is where I put on the newest information, the newest prophetic corroborations. And I've had people from 192 countries visiting, and people interacting on the blog, where any and everything is discussed pertaining to all this Meir material, and you can join in. So that's, what we do in terms of an outreach to people. I have my own YouTube channel as well and stuff like that. But it's important that people know this is going on in the world, folks, and try to get anything, even with no pun intended, within 500 light years in terms of evidence. There is none. Think about it. Nobody's ever shown you any real, verifiable, tested, credible evidence, and all they do are spin tall tales to entertain or scare or whatever, and lie and sell their stuff. So I do maybe one commercial during a show. Maybe at the end of the show, I remind people, hey, there's a free offer. I'm not here to pitch a bunch of stuff. I'm here to see if people care enough about their future survival to start digging in and finding the truth.
Is the reason you publish your books also in German is because that's what Billy speaks, and that part of Switzerland is Swiss German?
I don't publish the books. I produce the videos and DVDs and stuff. The books are published primarily by Meir in Switzerland, although two other countries that are affiliated. We have a Canadian group and an Australian group, and the rules for publication are that you include the German on the left-hand side and the English on the right-hand side, because the German is a better language for conveying all of the complex and intricate information. And while you can certainly get the idea from reading everything in English, it's said that if you can read it in German, you'll get even more benefit. But reading it in English is better than not reading it, that's for sure.
Now, let's go back to Semyazi that we just talked about. When was the first time Billy met Semyazi? And from what I recall from the story and from last time talking to you, didn't Semyazi take Billy on trips to see things?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, Svath took Meir on trips that had to do with time, that had to do with trips in the solar system. It showed him the moon and different things when he was only like 7 or 9 years old, whatever. Asket took him on trips on the Earth and back in time, and I think also forward in time. And Semyazi first met and spoke with Billy on January 28th, 1975. And she took the trips that she took him on, and that he also went on with other members of the contemporary Pleiadian group, like her father, Ptah, another person, Quetzal, with whom he's traveled with both of these people and all. Those trips took place throughout our universe, and they also pertain to trips forward and or backwards in time as well. So what you're dealing with here is time travel, physical travel in space, and tremendous amount of information that Meir has published about the universe, and things, that we start to find out when our scientists so-called discover it. It's a laugh, they discovered it. Those of us who've been reading the Meir material since the 70s, we've known about so many of these things before our scientists, and it's a laugh because they're all such pompous asses. They think they know so much, and they know nothing. They know nothing. And trying to get any of these people to even look at the Meir material, they're so afraid. They're terrified that they don't want to be, they'll lose their funding, their credibility, their tenure, their positions. Someone will laugh at them. They're not real scientists these days. They're specialists looking at information in a certain area. I even recently wrote to a physicist who seemed like a pretty intelligent young guy, but it's like he's afraid to look outside of his specialty. So we're dealing with a lot of people who are functionally idiots. They can do their little thing in their realm, and they may do nice work, but in the bigger pictures and realities of life, they don't want to know. They don't want to know.
It actually blows me away why Billy Meir was targeted as being the biggest fraud, or all these things that he made these videos, or those are models he used. But there's so many other people that have contacts, or some people claim to be abductees. Why do you think he was targeted and had 23 assassination attempts, unless, of course, the people who tried to kill him knew he was the seventh prophet, as you just mentioned?
Well, let me answer it. First of all, Meir's contacts are singularly authentic. The other people that claim contacts with extraterrestrials have zero evidence. So it means that they're liars. They may be just schizophrenics imagining it, but they're lying whatever way you look at it, until they can put evidence on the table. And look, I don't care. I don't care if there's 20 contactees who are real, if you could learn something. But it isn't the case. As far as abductions, that's primarily secret military stuff, useful for mind control and all the rest. None of these people, there are people that have had some miserable experiences, but they're having them at the hands of the military, not extraterrestrials. Now, it's possible that there'll be some information that comes forward that says, look, the Pleiadians say they've discovered that this is happening now on Earth, or that, or this race, in which case, fine, we can update it. But the truth up until now is, this is not extraterrestrial stuff. People want to be important, see? They want to feel special. But they couldn't have endured a fraction of what Meir went through to fulfill his role as the seventh prophet for Earth. It's a very it's not a celebrity gig. and as the only genuine contactee. These are brutal. Look at what happened to people in the past who were prophets, real prophets. They get nailed up, crucified, attacked, hacked to pieces, shot at, like Meir. Because, and to answer your question, why? It's about control. This world is run by people of very, very low consciousness who are highly materialistic, who are greedy and hungry for power. It's been this way for millennia, and it ain't ending soon. And this is rooted in religion and politics, the two evil, ugly twin sisters of enslavement for planet Earth. You know, until people realize the core teaching, the spiritual teaching in the Meir case, the first principle is 100% self-responsibility for everything in your life. No outside authorities, imaginary gods, saints, saviors, angels, demons, extraterrestrials, masters, gurus, anything else. Phony leaders. You are 100% responsible for your life. Nobody's coming to save you. That's why we're trying to tell you, you people are pushing yourself to the brink of goddamn extinction. Wake up. Crack open a few books. Start studying for yourself. Question, challenge, turn off the noise of your media, even your alternative media. It gets all huffed and puffed and gets everybody stirred up. You mentioned Alex Jones. Alex Jones has some good information. Some stuff's accurate. He knows about the Meir case, but absolutely refuses to mention it for a couple reasons. One, he's highly religious, or at least represents himself that way. Two, he wants all the attention. He's kind of a narcissist, and he wants to keep stirring people up and keeping them in hyper excitability because that is good for the sales of his products and his audience. The failing of Alex Jones and all the rest of the hysterics in the political, the media, they don't encourage reasonableness. They're not saying we all need to learn to sit down with each other and hash out a couple important things like, what are the real, true, eternally valid principles of human life, of all life? Forget Democrat, Republican, left, right, conservative, liberal. What's the eternal truth? Now, if we can identify what those values are, we still can have our conflicts in how to attain them, but we won't be at each other's throats for the sake of selling vitamins and the sake of pushing gun sales with each other for no reason. We're only exterminating ourselves through this conflict stuff. If we do not see all of us as, incarnated spirits, human beings of equal value, who have a duty to life, to themselves, to their families, neighbors, brothers and sisters that we are, and to this environment, of course, which we've poisoned so far beyond it's unbearable, if instead of this polarization that will destroy us through civil war, it will destroy us through global war. And then the small number of survivors who are able to come up and take a breath with however many nostrils they have from the mutations and eyes, if they can see, they will finally intelligently decide that, well, people went about this the wrong way. But that will cost literally billions of human lives and destruction to the planet, and then hundreds of years until the survivors can regroup and civilize themselves and rebuild the world in harmony with the laws of nature, in harmony with the truly eternal, valid principles of life, the laws and recommendations of the creation. Folks, if you can't put your phones down long enough, if you can't turn off your video games and your Xboxes long enough to contemplate that you're a human being and that all of this stuff is polluting your poor mind, and your spirit is immune from that, but your conscience is hidden. You are being polluted and manipulated and controlled and led down a path to destruction by all of this garbage. If you don't start thinking for yourself and being willing to stand up for truth, you're as good as done. You will be enslaved and biochipped at best, or annihilated at worst.
Eradicated, exactly. That's why I always say that we are expendable. I'm going to talk about and ask you about technology in a second because I have a comment about that. But I just wanted to let you know the Cousins brothers, Blake and Brent Cousins of Third Phase of Moon, the world's largest UFO YouTube channel. Everybody out there, make sure you subscribe to them. They are always on top of the best UFO footage and news. And they actually asked something that we touched upon earlier. This is exactly what they wrote. They wrote, let's see here. I will read it to you. It says, is Billy making a new documentary? Maybe we at Third Phase of Moon can help.
Well, at this point, and I was just over there a few months back, and I'm in touch with them in Switzerland. They do not feel that a new documentary is necessary. What they have said, what they've made available, the predictions from 1948, and I'm going to go into this because hi guys, hi cousins, brothers, and brothers, cousins, and all the rest, and I hope we'll do a show together too, because here's what happened. A couple of years ago, Billy published, and we've got several of these up, prophecies and predictions from the 1940s from Svath. So when I went to Switzerland, I sat with Billy and I said, Billy, did Svath make these predictions by using his consciousness-related powers? And he looked at me, he said, no, of course not. He did it through time travel. That was about the most devastating answer I could have heard. Now, why? Because it means that everything, especially in that 1948 document, is something that Svath personally observed happening in his future. All those things up through 2017 have already occurred. We're in 2018, about to pop into 2019, and there's more very specific stuff coming our way from that. And then, guys, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and I don't know if the Cousins brothers heard this, Meir's document from just last October, his own predictions, which they're stunning. They are stunning. And the likelihood, some were listed as prophecies, some as predictions. We are now far more in the realm that these are now predictions, and they're coming. People need to know this because we can't protect ourselves to the degree that we still can. We can't do it by pretending that these things are not coming upon us, by pretending that all of the phony people with their UFO talk and that they know anything and that they have any information that will help. We have a lot of very specific information long given to us and given to us even recently by Meir and the Pleiadians to help guide us through what's coming. Because when some of these things come down, some of these spike events are going to just drive people for a loop. They won't know what happened. How did this happen? And then they will be, look, some of these events that have hit Florida, that have hit some of these islands, when you talked about these mega quakes, in that 48 document, Svath says Indonesia and Sumatra specifically lays it out. Then the stuff coming in Italy, parts of countries and continents going into the sea. Now, there are specific things to do, but the reason it's important to let hundreds of thousands and millions of people know about this is not to try to convince them, oh, the Billy Meir case, that's the only real case. It's to get them to look and make up their own minds, because it means people have to start determining the truth for themselves. We are too addicted to entertainment, and we are like, it's like sheep literally being led and you know where. This is not a joke. And the hardest part of this for me is when I have to talk to people in person. I've been doing some personal presentations. I've got one coming up next year in Sedona and all. I'll go anywhere there's a legitimate event to present this. I want to do this for scientists, but they're so stupidly stubborn. I've done 2 presentations at Northern Arizona University, invited in by a professor who was a skeptic, but to his credit, he took 4 months to go through the Meir material and then said, you got to present this in my class. And then 3 months later, you got to present it again. The first time was like in November of 2015. He writes me an email. He says, Michael, Guess what I told my wife after yesterday's attacks in Paris? That's when there were those terrible Islamist attacks in Paris.
Yes,
he said,
yes.
Remember?
Charlie Hebdo, yeah.
Yeah. He said, I told her I knew this was coming. So thank you, Michael. Why did he say that? Because I sent him Meir's prophecies from 1981 foretelling the attacks. And they're not done. There's more to come. In 48, Svath, in that document, he says there will be a crazy woman in Germany who is going to open the floodgates to massive, quote-unquote, migrations, which will allow into Europe and other countries some legitimate refugees, but primarily criminals and terrorists. Meir has already published the actual number of ISIS terrorists that have been in this country 2 years ago, and how many other lone wolf sleepers are here. We get no truth from our government, and our wonderful people in the alternative media, they know nothing. They only know what they hear from Alex Jones. Every now and then there's some really good people like Kevin Shipp, whistleblower from the CIA. He'll tell what he knows, but he doesn't even know this stuff. They don't know it. And you, the average person, within, let's say, 5 days can know more than all those people put together because it's all available. Most of it's for free. We're giving it away. What do you want? Yes, if you want to buy a book, wonderful. It keeps me going. You want to buy a DVD, great. I'll give you a free one on top of it. I do this voluntarily. I never know who'll buy what, and I don't think about it because this is too important. It's our future survival. And like these guys, the Cousins brothers, because Dr. J, you talked about our interviews together some years ago, and they've got, 600,000 subscribers. Can you imagine what would happen in this world if 600,000 people just hit their keyboards and looked for this material, looked for the Meir case? And let's say that I do something with the Cousins brothers and we pinpoint certain things very specifically, like this program we're doing now. We're doing 2 hours of a great broad, base exploration of an overview of a ton of material. You start to get into specifics here. The warnings from Meir and the Pleiadians going back years ago about glyphosate, this terrible cancer-causing compound by Monsanto. They exposed that years ago. Meir did. I mean, you will be so surprised when you get into what they warned about. Going back, pardon me, years and decades, long before even our environmentalists were concerned about it. Meir's the first person to warn about climate change and global warming and the ozone damage destruction and which is largely due to atomic radiation. Folks, if you find out this has been kept from you. These guys here, Dr. J, the Cousins brothers, and other people who've been kind enough to give me the opportunity to bring this to you, they've done you the greatest service, in my opinion, they can do. They've given the opportunity for a presentation, and now it's up to you. And if you realize there are groups in America, throughout Europe, far more people who have come together, who study this material, who are using it to make their plans about how to survive these coming times based on what is coming with certainty. And it ain't an alien invasion, and it's not imaginary grays and imaginary reptilians. We've got nothing to fear at this stage of our evolution from extraterrestrials. We're doing the wipeout job ourselves. So, these good folks here, they've given a platform for this, and we are touching, this is the tip of the iceberg. When you get into what's been told in here that's useful to you in your own life, the first place I ever found out information on getting moringa, the most nutritious single growing substance on the earth. I mean, it's in the Meir material. Even the stuff on spirulina, which many of us know about, you people in Hawaii and other places. But go back decades, it's in the Meir material. Go back about the things that are dangerous pertaining to cell phones and radiation and it's in the Meir material before it's anywhere else. And stuff that nobody has yet covered. You won't find it in Alex Jones. You won't find it on mainstream news. And you want to get out of the way of this wrecking ball that's coming back on us from all of the bad pendulums that have been sent out. There you go.
I have a comment here. I'm going to read it to you. We got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get as much as possible. It says, how likely do you think the public will perceive a prophecy? We've seen over time examples, and it seems that it's labeled a hoax or the support is extremely reserved unless it's religious. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's a good question, and it's somebody that's thinking this realistically. The answer is, unfortunately, a lot of the public demonstrably hasn't been able to. Even people who think they're into UFOs, think about it. Think about how much disinformation, if what I'm telling you is right, that all these people that are the so-called UFO experts and contactees are basically just lying their butts off, and this is the real deal. Anybody can prove it. I mean, honestly, I'll send you links till the cows come home, and you can reproduce photographic tests literally online. There's stuff people don't even know has been done on this. So it's a not hopeful sign for the mass of humanity. Many great people in there, but they are religiously polluted or controlled, or whatever you want to call it, politically hopeless, thinking that politics is the answer to anything. It's only advantage-oriented one-upsmanship and fraud and manipulation. So you've got these two systems that run most of the world, which are dominant in most countries, although you have in some countries that are not religious, only politics, but those are, still not too many of those. So it's very unlikely. But here's the beauty of this argument. Those of you who are listening to this who will think about it and who'll do your own due diligence and you'll ask questions, you'll send challenges, people who are reasonable. People who are reasonable who may not even think about UFOs or prophecies or anything else. And some who are into that stuff, but all those people, but they either have never heard about the Meir case or whatever they've heard is, it's a hoax, right? I've talked to lots of people who were told this was a hoax. I've taken on every major professional skeptic and kicked their butts because they can't address it. I volunteered to go and present this for free. James Randi events, anything you want, I'll come. All your skeptics, they wouldn't even accept that. They know now that they can't address it, and it pains them because it's real and they don't know what to do with it. So if for the nature of this question and what are you going to do with all these wonderful people, you don't run out. Actually, I don't recommend going out and trying to tell the world about it. I think the first thing to do is find out for yourself if what I've been saying tonight is based in evidence, and you can determine that. Again, criticize, question, challenge, send me an email, give me a week sometimes, I'll get back to you, and then determine for yourself. If you find, not believe, but if you are convinced through logic and reasoning and evidence, copyrights and scientists and all that it's real and true, then decide what it means in your life. Now that you know, what will you do about it? How will it change your thinking? And when you start to get Meir's books on thinking, wow, does your life change? Because you realize the effects of religion and politics on people have made them so stupid. The mass of the world doesn't know how to think. That's what most of Meir's books are teaching, so that you can actually use your mind and your thoughts to direct, control, create your life, not like the secret movie where all you focus on is when you get your next car. How to literally improve your life, your health, your relationships, your income, everything through the application of truly appropriate, correct thinking. And then people will notice that your life is improving. You can answer questions as best you can for them. You can certainly tell anybody you think is interested in the topic, hey, at least check this stuff out, this crazy Billy Meir stuff. Here, you can write this guy and he'll answer your questions as best he can or tell you where you can find answers. You don't have to go and convince people. Now, if you feel a calling to talk to people about it, fine. Just don't be religious about it. Don't try and proselytize or missionize. Just be honest about, hey, I found this is really interesting. And, do you want to talk about it? You don't? Okay, fine. I won't talk. I can't. I've known people in my life for 20 years more, of course. I can't even talk about it with them. And I don't try because I like them for who they are. I recognize that this is not for them. And that doesn't make them wrong or lesser. I've got a friend where I live. He's a guy who's 56 years, a lifelong Mormon. He's a great guy. He actually likes the Meir case, but we don't talk about religion and beliefs. And I don't go a lot into the Meir case because we're not here to convert each other. His values overlap with mine. That's one of the keys you're going to learn about survival. You have to find that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. I was going to say, we got about 5 minutes left. 2020 is literally around the corner. I mean, we're just wrapping up 2018 right now. So my question to you is, what's next for you? What does 2019 hold for you? What does 2019 hold for Billy? Because if 2020 comes around and Billy is around and his prophecies proven correct, I would think that would change everybody's mind and start to look at him more differently. Because when I first saw the videos, the what's the documentary? The Silent Truth
Revolution of Truth.
The Revolution of Truth. When I first saw that, of course, I believed everything I saw, although everything he spoke about, or he was going through in a journal, I believe, or pictures, photographs that he actually had top of the videos. But with all the noise surrounding Billy Meir, I was like, wait a minute, what do I believe now? Because for every one person that says, hey, this is the real deal, you have 5 to 10 that say it's not.
The answer is this. You don't go on what anybody says, including me. I'm pointing you to where you, the audience, you, the interested people in this world, can find the evidence. And for instance, in the Silent Revolution of Truth, I just sent a link to that film. We actually shot that film 12 years ago in 2006, finished in 2008. In there's one area, what follows the other. We talk about overpopulation, because that is the core problem on the planet. And I can do a whole thing on that. You'll see everything. You start narrowing it down. Wow, there's so many people, and that affects this, affects that. And it's not about eugenics. You're not supposed to kill people off. There's a solution for that. But that leads into illegal immigration, because you've got all these people who overbred in many countries, often under the guidance of the church, go forth and multiply, who had no educations, no work. Now they think that, well, they're entitled to cross through any boundaries, whether it's in Europe or here or anything else. And what happens? Lack of self-responsibility. People need to solve the problems in their own countries, and that's where we should help them, not allow people to come crashing through borders, violate the sovereignty of a nation. That's not the first act of a responsible person. And there's a lot. I know, and I've worked with wonderful people who came here illegally, but this is a little different now, folks. This country will fall into civil war. Got to understand. And some of that is now unavoidable. So you might want to learn how to navigate. And depending also where you live in this country and other parts of the world, certain areas that may be better than others. My email is on my website. Start asking questions, but first start searching. My blog and my website have search engines. My pitch, again, theyfly.com is my website. Buy any book, any CD, any DVD. I'll send you something free with it. My blog, theyflyblog.com. Come and discuss this stuff. There's new blogs that come out every week because we're always updating our information. So I'm looking forward to visiting again with you guys. I really appreciate this, Dr. J.
Absolutely.
And, I hope it answered some questions, and I hope it also just gave people enough, of a pinch to check this out. It may change your life for the better to do so. And if any of you know all these UFO experts and contactees and they're offended by my calling them liars and phonies and charlatans and frauds, I'll be glad to debate any and all of them at any time and place, so you can pass that on.
And like I said, we absolutely will do this. And I'll tell you one of the main reasons. There's so much to it, so much to Billy Meir's case, and even your own research, even the 7 times you had your own sightings. But like you said, it's not what the UFO is. It's what's inside. It's the purpose. And as you mentioned earlier, we are very polarizing. We are doing everything but getting together. And that was one thing I was going to say about technology. It's actually driving us apart as opposed to bringing us closer together. And when you mentioned that woman in Germany, I'm thinking, of course, Angela Merkel. So,
of course.
Yeah. So that's a pretty much given. Well, we are out of time, so let me plug in a few things. First of all, folks, remember, we are 5 days a week. This Friday is Friday Flashback with Dr. Roger Lear, the only 2-hour interview I had with him before he did pass away. Also, tomorrow we have Paul Davids for hour 1. And remember, the only thing you need to remember about this show is the name of it. Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. For instance, the website, drjradiolive.com. At DRJ Radio Live is every single account from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Google, Gmail, Flickr, Tumblr, Buffer, of course, YouTube, and Pinterest even. But the most important one I want you all to remember is Minds, like Minds, Minds.com. Open an account there. It's the only uncensored social media that will pay you in Ethereum-based cryptocurrency, or should I say tokens, because Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. And let me give some shout outs real quick. I do want to thank Katie and Daryl Neely of Late Night in the Midlands for doing all the hard work behind the scenes, not only producing this show, being audio engineers, but also they are the station managers. Also in the UK theater, I want to thank JC. My moderator, Adam, he also goes by, well, if you see him on YouTube, he's Adarai K. And I also want to thank Pam Vrettenberg, who does a lot of work in the social media aspect. We're a small team here, but we try to get the truth out, folks. That's what we all are about. That's what the station exists. That's what the show exists. Again, Mr. Horn, like I said, we will definitely do this again. With that being said, everybody on the East Coast, you have yourself a good night. Even on the West Coast, we'll have ourselves a good evening. And those in the UK and EU or wherever else you're listening, you have a good morning since you're technically in Thursday. With that being said, this is Dr. J, and I am officially signing off.